Everyone, welcome to our Fireside chat today. My name is Winifred Soribe. I'm going to be your host, and we have the lovely Tamara, who's going to be our guest for today. Before we make a start, just to let you know that this Fireside chat is being run by a community that I manage on Founders and Mentors. And what is Founders and Mentors? Founders and Mentors is a free mentoring platform for the pre-launch ecosystem. So what we do on there is that we provide mentoring, as I've said already, and support, training, and it's just a community. It's made up of several communities. So, for example, when you join, which it is free to join if you're a business owner, you've started a business, you're planning on starting a business, you're trying to find your way around, that's the place you should be on. We do have several different communities on there. We have one for those starting tech-based businesses. We have one for those running in the creative side. We also have for those that are female founders. We have a wide range of communities. So if you think you want to join, we'll put the link to join at some point in the chat function. And like I've said, it's free to join in. So we're going to kick off with our fireside chat. We have 25 people on the call already. And we're excited to see what Laura has to share with us. We want to learn from her, and we're very pleased to have her on. So Laura, I'm going to kick off with the questions. And my first question really is, let's go back to your childhood, where it all began. Did you have any particular role models that set you on the path to sort of running your own family business and just being who you are today? Is there any strong influence you had?
I would definitely say my parents were hugely influential in the early years of my life. My mum had a very great career with the Ministry of Defence. She was in the military, she was military trained, and she stepped away from that because of what we call today mummy guilt. She was really struggling with missing out on me growing up. And so she gave that up and stayed home to raise me and my siblings. My dad was the primary breadwinner for a number of years, and he worked for a chain called Tesco. He started as a shelf stacker in that supermarket business, and he worked his way up to a kind of senior management, supervisory level, and then senior management, and then sort of executive board level. So that was definitely influential in seeing the decisions that my parents made about their careers and how it impacted our lives as children growing up. I think that my dad was very brave to stay with the 9 to 5, because I think in his heart that's not what he wanted to do, but he kind of made the best of what the situation that he kind of was given, and to work your way up from entry level right up to senior management in a number of sort of 3 decades, that's really powerful, and that spoke to me in great volumes.
Okay, great, fantastic, very inspiring. For those of you, because we have a global audience here, so for those of you that do not know, Tesco is one of the top grocery retailers here in the UK. It's like our own Walmart. So just to give you an overview. So I can imagine, because, and it's something I can relate to quite strongly, because my dad had a very strong influence on my own life as well. And, most people, tend to think, it's only the mothers that have a role to play. Well, not really. Dads, they're children whom their dads have played such strong roles in their own lives. And I'm very, very happy to see that in your own life and in my own life as well. So thank you for sort of sharing that. Now, moving on to you've sort of, gone into university, you've gotten your degree, and you started working. So based on the bio that you shared with us, you have sort of a vast industry experience. Now, if we go back there, you've started, you've worked in all these blue chip companies, helping them out with their stocking, inventory, and all that stuff. Now, deciding to step away from that and then start your own family business, what prompted that decision?
I think that was the connection with my spouse. I think I should lay the foundation and say that I met my spouse in a business setting. I went for a job interview to work for a company he was running. This was back in 2010. And I actually interviewed for a seamstress role. But the joke was, I'm not a great sewer. So that didn't go very well. He offered me a marketing role instead, which I kind of declined, and we kind of hit it off from there. And so connecting with my spouse in the way that we did, he made it very clear that he wanted to be an entrepreneur, that he wanted to work for himself, and he had kind of almost a 10-year plan. And very early on in that plan, he wanted to kind of buy property and set up a tailoring business outside of London. At the time we were in London. Everybody knows that living in the city, rents are high, spaces are small, and so it made sense for us to leave London, which we did a couple of years later.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So, and I think, when you say, you had to move out to London and you guys had a 10-year plan and all that, we tend to see some people feel like, when you are starting a family business, I think these days there's this narrative of, having to do things for yourself, being independent. But, I like the approach you guys have taken, starting it as a team, because sometimes you find out that when you start a business on your own, yeah, you can do well. But when you start it with someone, it's, there's someone to share that burden with. So there's a lady I know that has a property business, here in Luton. And when we, had a chat, one of the things she highlighted, about being the sole owner of a business is there's no other person to share the struggles, the challenges with, when there's this customer that is totally unhappy with the services, there's nobody to go to. So everything is right there on your shoulders. So I really like the team approach that you guys have taken to starting your own business and sort of growing things, from there. Now,
I agree.
Yeah, go on. Do you want to add?
No, I was going to say I agree. And I think that sometimes in sharing the burden, there are different roles. So Johnson is very involved in the business and the day-to-day, whereas I'm able to kind of take a step back. And so often he can be quite emotionally involved, and I don't take on as much emotion. So I'm able to really be strategic about the decisions we make. And I think that's why it's good to always have kind of somebody else that co-founds with you to just keep you on the kind of straight and narrow and keep you strategic and not emotional.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, because yes, when you start a business, it's like your brainchild, isn't it? You invest your emotions, your time, your money, everything in it, and you're so attached to it that it's so difficult to be objective. So I do appreciate, how you say you're able to step back and be less emotional and then make those kinds of very objective decisions on how to go forward with the business. Now, I think while we're here in this area of, running a business with your husband, and, that makes it more of like a family business. Last year, I think that was in September or so, August or September, we had Pfizer on the Fireside chat as one of our guests, and she and her husband have started a business called Slink. It's a tech-based platform where if you want to say you're applying for a job, it gives you the opportunity to do a 30-second interview of yourself, attach that to your CV so that whoever is recruiting can see this video of yourself, know who you are, have a better understanding of that. And she too started the business with her husband, like I've said. And I think while we're here, it's just to see, as you've been running this business now for some time, I think it's more than a decade or so. What's it been like in terms of the advantages and disadvantages of, running the business with your husband?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we're coming up to a decade this August, actually, well, this July. And I'd say delayed gratification has been a big thing for us in the beginning, not being able to pay yourself. And that's why often having a 9 to 5 on the side really helps when you're first starting out, because it can take up to 3 years before you really start seeing profit or return on your business investment. And so renting a property is a big leap of faith. A lot of people start their businesses from home, and so that really helps with the overheads. But once you start kind of renting your premises, there's a lot to consider. There's water rates, there's filing taxes every year with HMRC, there's electricity, there's potentially, if you start growing your team, employment and employment law to consider. So I think it was a lot to take on, and it was a very steep learning curve in the early days. But once the doors were open, the customers came in. And once you have a service that people really need, want, and value, then you will have no trouble. And we were inundated, not immediately, but after sort of 12 months, we started to see a steady trickle, because we were new to the area. We were offering something that nobody else in the area was offering, or if they were offering it, they weren't doing it well. And so we really did take the town by storm, and they were really glad to see the business thrive, and they told others. Word of mouth is the most powerful PR out there. We have an Instagram page, but very little of our business comes through Instagram. It comes through word of mouth and recommendations and people that have had great experiences. And as the business grew, so did the offering. So we started just doing alterations. So taking up your hems, sewing buttons on. We grew to do, curtains and more specialized tailoring services. And this was something that was very new to the consumer base here. Many people thought you just buy your clothes, and if they don't fit, they don't fit. They had no idea that you could have a bespoke tailoring service, and that personal relationship that Johnson was able to strike with the customers was just gold. It was real gold for us. People loved the idea of having a bespoke tailor at their disposal, and they were willing to pay for it. And so the business just grew from there.
That's really, really, really good to hear. And I think some of the things to unpick from what you said there is that, it typically takes about 3 years for the business to become profitable. And that's what I usually say to my students and to the entrepreneurs I work with. I say it's, you should give the business about 3 years. If you're not making any profit, then that there's a problem, and maybe you need to go back to the drawing board and sort of change some things, that you're doing. But it's also for people to know, because these days, there's this buzz about being an entrepreneur, being your own boss and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, it's worth people knowing that it's not the easiest of things to do. You see, it does take time, it takes a lot of commitment, and it doesn't start paying off right away. So it's just, I'm glad you mentioned that. But something else that I found quite interesting is also the fact that you said PR, word of mouth is the best PR out there. I mean, you've been in business for almost 10 years now, so I think we can take your word for it. But why I say this as well is because when I was, I've just recently defended my PhD thesis, and it's in the area of entrepreneurial finance. While I was collecting my data in London, I sort of had to go into, businesses there to give them my questionnaire to fill out. And some of the questions, I had one of my variables, social media. And, it was quite interesting that you asked quite a few of the businesses there. Do you have an Instagram page? Do you use social media? Do you have a website? And quite a few of them did not. And I found it quite strange. Everyone thinks everything, well, things do happen on social media, but word of mouth, like you said, because I met this a business owner as well, no website, nothing, and it's just word of mouth that they relied on, and they're doing so well. So I think it's really good that you said that, and we know that it does work. So thank you very much for sharing that. Now, but one of your businesses that you started off is like Bespoke Tailoring. Before you guys, you said that, when you started it, people were excited to sort of come to you guys. What prompted you guys to go into that field of business?
I think that was That was something that Johnson always had in mind. He definitely had an appetite for the luxury, more premium market in terms of tailoring. He was very familiar with off-peg.
Over 10 inches.
As was I, having a background in merchandising, I was familiar with off the peg suits. But what we were finding more and more is that our body shapes are very different to how they were 20 and 30 years ago. And so the average guy really struggles to walk into a store and just find something that fits off the peg. And so what Johnson was finding was that the alterations he was doing were kind of from the shoulder. We have some clients with different length legs, can you believe it, different length arms. They've gained weight, they've lost weight. And so there were a lot of alterations taking place. But what Johnson found was that there was a gap in the market for the gentleman who desired something that was just for him, just completely designed by him. He could pick his own lining, his own buttons, his own fabric. And that's another thing. Fabric quality makes a huge difference. You know, the quality of the fabric dictates the value of the garment. And so what Johnson found was that there was a real desire for this from his client. And so he delivered on that desire, and he was able to start supplying made to measure. We started at, I think, around £750, which was very, very much attainable for a number of our customers who were older gentlemen who were perhaps father of the groom. They had a special occasion coming up. It was their 50th birthday, their 40th birthday, and they just wanted to treat themselves. And this was obviously all pre-COVID, but there was a huge disposable income among our clients that just wanted to do something special and have a hand in designing a garment, something which they'd never done before. And again, it was just the wow factor. It was the creme de la creme. And we were doing sort of 2 or 3 of those a week before COVID hit. So again, that kind of really propelled the business. And it was complemented by the suit hire service that we also offer here. So we have special occasions like Ascot. We have some grooms, a lot of grooms and groomsmen that come and hire. So we were competing against Moss Bros. I think the nearest Moss Bros is kind of Milton Keynes, which is maybe 12 miles away from here. So we were really clawing a lot of market share in Dunstable, and it was a good time pre-COVID.
Fantastic. Thank you. It was a really good time pre-COVID. I couldn't agree more, but it's quite interesting. And I think another thing to add on there is, well, if you look at the statistics in the UK, it says about 70% of the wealth, 60 to 70% of the wealth in the UK lies in the hands of people above the age of 65. So I think that's a premium market that you've got right there. And so I can imagine. Okay, good to know. Now, moving on to my next question. Now we're thinking about, you're running the business, you've been running it for some time now. What has been, if you think back and you say, what's that day that I hope would never happen again, in terms of the challenges or the difficulties of that day, do you have any experiences you want to share with the audience and myself?
I would definitely say the dirty C word, COVID. I think watching the news, the kind of with the Boris telling us all that we have to shut and giving us a date we had to shut by, and just the not knowing of how long we were going to close for, that was quite worrying, especially because the year before we'd made significant investment in 2019 in introducing bridal. So we'd gone to Nice and we'd sourced these beautiful bridal gowns that were going to complement and be the next stage in our business offering. And so for that to happen in March, being told we had to close and closing for practically a year on and off, we missed an entire season of bridal. And that was catastrophic for us as a business, because we'd really felt that this was going to take us to the next level in terms of our, our turnover, in terms of our market share and things like that. And so just that evening on the news, I'll never forget it. And, Johnson and I would have loved to stay open, but it was, of course, law. And in staying open, you would be breaking the law. We considered a food offering, perhaps, and diversifying further. But you can't just diversify into a market that you don't have any experience in. And when the resource isn't there, the finance isn't there, I think that diversifying takes significant planning, significant expertise and implementation. And that just wasn't a risk that we were able to take at that time. So yeah, that was a tough time.
Yeah, and I share the same sentiment. I remember when initially, even going into the lockdown just seemed quite ridiculous to me in the first place. And I remember saying to my partner, I don't think it's going to last for more than a month. I never imagined it would last up to June and then we'll go back into lockdown again during the Christmas. So I really do know that it was such a bad time for businesses, especially those that cater to, hospitality events and all that. So, if everyone is in their houses, there's no need to do fancy suits and all that. So I can totally imagine, how it's been. Now, thank you. Now, I know that recently, your family business, you guys have your bespoke tailoring. So just so that the audience knows, I've put the link to the website of Laura's family business in the chat. So, if you want to check it out, by all means do. Also, so that we know it's a fireside chat, we do take questions. If you have any questions you want to ask Laura or myself, please post it in the chat and she'll be happy to answer you. So Laura, I know that recently, back to what I was saying, you guys have now recently also gone into sort of guest housing. So, offering rooms on a daily basis to guests to, come there, sleeping overnight for a certain fee. So in a sense, like not a hotel per se, but more like a guest inn. Now, in deciding to go into that field of business, what prompted that decision?
Well, that was purely a conversation and an opportunity. As I mentioned, Johnson had quite a tight-knit clientele. And the thing about the tailoring boutique is that it's a very bespoke service. So often you were one-to-one with Johnson, you're having your own personal consultation. And Johnson happened to meet somebody who had access to this property. And when the time came for the property to be sold, that individual was in touch with Johnson through a note in the door, which we didn't receive for some time because of lockdown. And it all began from there. Johnson's very focused about what he wants, and he can be very much like a dog with a bone. So once he knew that this property was up for sale, he had to have it. And the process really began from there. And that was during the lockdown. So we're talking, I think, June, spring, summer 2020 was when it began.
Okay, so great to know that. And, we know that sort of Johnson. So Johnson, we're beginning to, Johnson is in the audience as well. So at some point, Johnson would have had your name over and over again. You'd have to say something to us at some point. But let's think about your own contribution to the business, Laura, in terms of, deciding to go into real estate, because real estate can be a very expensive venture to start. It's something that if you get it wrongly, you might, in terms of the location, the timing, and everything could go wrong. So what was your own thought about it? When, he mentioned this to you, what was your own take?
I mean, my view on property is that it's one of the most secure ways to generate income, to generate profit, to generate wealth, let's say, and generational wealth at that. If you look at places in London like Regent Street, it's owned predominantly by one family, and those properties have stayed within that family for long periods of time. And so this guest house was, to me, an opportunity to generate income. And I think having the business, the tailoring is one thing, but having kind of income that comes from you having to do nothing, that's kind of how you grow and build as an entrepreneur. I think when a business requires too much of your attention, that's a liability and that's risk. And so for me, this was an easy win. And it was something that wasn't too unfamiliar, because we had purchased a property in 2013, which we purchased as a buy-to-let. And it was a buy-to-let right up until 2021, I think, or 2020, when we sold it. So we had done this before. So I was no stranger to tenancy agreements and brokers and the whole transaction of purchasing property. It wasn't completely new to me.
Okay, good to know. So in a sense, there was some, background, some experience in that field, and so that gave you the extra confidence to be able to go in and start this business. And if we think about how you've gotten it started, I know that you said it's what, a 5 to 6 room bedroom. It's 5 to 6 rooms in the property.
Yeah, it was 12. When we purchased it, it had 12 rooms. But when we kind of knocked it back and did our dimensions, we had to, there's legal requirements about how much square footage each person should have. And so when we initially purchased it, we planned to have it as a HMO. And by HMO, for those that don't know, I mean housing of multiple occupancy. So it used to be called in the 60s a tenement yard, where lots of people live on one floor and share a bathroom and facilities, and then it's community living. It was something that was new in the 60s that they kind of developed, and I know in America they have similar setups. So that was the initial plan. We lost quite a bit of space when we refurbished, and we went from 12 down to 7 units.
Okay. So now if you think about, so there's a question in the chat, but that really ties in very nicely to my next question. But before we get there, now let's think about the financing bit. So finance is really my own area of expertise, and we just want to walk through. Now, for people that are thinking about, okay, I want to start a guest house kind of a business, and I'm thinking about what the cost is going to be like. Do you want to tell us what the financing journey has been like?
Okay, so the financing journey is not an easy one. I'll start by saying that. We personally always prefer to work with a broker. A broker is the person who liaises between yourself and the lender. The reason a broker is beneficial is because they have access to multiple lenders that the average applicant like yourself may not be aware of or may not know how to contact. And so in working with a broker, a lot of the heavy lifting was done for us. Similarly, another reason to have a 9-to-5 before you kind of start out is that it will provide you with steady income. It will provide you with pay slips and the things that you need to satisfy your lender that you're able to make the repayments required. And so I'd highly recommend that if before you make any significant purchase, that you do have other streams of income that will help your lender be convinced that you're worth lending to, basically. And in giving such a long answer, I've forgotten the fullness of your question, Winifred.
Okay, so no, my question was, in buying this property, how did you get a mortgage? Obviously it must have been a mortgage, but other than that, did you have to sort of sell things off and bring monies from different sources to be able to buy the property?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, we had a buy-to-let property, which was a 1-bedroom flat in location Zone 1 in London. And initially, we had hoped to release some equity from that property in order to secure the purchase. However, when we attempted to do that, we realized that it may not be possible. And so we sold the flat in its entirety to secure the purchase of the guest house. And that's how we did it.
Okay, fantastic. And sort of got funds from other places. So we have
there was a bridging loan as well, which I won't talk too much about, but
okay.
Yeah.
So a bridging loan
and
property.
Selling a property, yeah. So releasing equity, I would recommend if you're able to release equity, because that enables you to retain your asset and make the purchase. And I think that was our preference. But depending on what you're purchasing, if what you're purchasing is significantly more than the value of what you're trying to release the equity from, then obviously it may not balance.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Now, moving on, I think this is where, the first question in the chat comes to. It says, and I'll just ask that instead of mine, how do you overcome if you get criticism from the customer? And, this is quite interesting because yours, with the guest house, running a guest house kind of a business, the thing there is people are very picky with where they sleep, where they rest, and it's very easy for them to leave negative comments and things like that. So with the question in the chat, how do you get over those kinds of criticisms? What initiative did you take if you ever got direct criticism from your customers? So let's deal with the first two questions first. How do you overcome it? And when you've gotten, say, face-to-face criticism from a client or customer, how have you dealt with that?
I think we take a very old-fashioned approach in that we believe the customer is always right, even when they're not. And we like to keep our customers happy, keep them satisfied. And we try to provide the most elegant premium experience possible. We respond immediately once a problem's raised. We always respond straight away. If it's on Google, we respond, we offer some kind of remedy, whether it be money back, whether it be a discount off another stay. But there are some things you can't escape, and that's personal preference. So if somebody says the water pressure was too low, somebody else will say the water pressure was too high. And so at some point you have to be confident in your brand and know that you're offering the best service that you possibly can. I mean, the guest house is still in its early days, and so far we've had some great feedback, but we have had some people that haven't had a great time, and that's okay. But we are committed to keep doing what we're doing, and we are also encouraging our guests, if they can, to spread the word. Like I say, word of mouth is the best possible PR, and we're really pleased with what we're seeing so far.
Great, that's really good to know. The fact that it's part of, the thing is, we're all humans, and you can never satisfy every single human being in the world. So I think it's quite important to have that in mind. Even though we always follow the philosophy of the customer is always right, you do the best you can, and that's just it. There'll always be the grumpy ones, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I think it's just having that in mind. Now, the final bit of that question says, did it ever discourage you to do the business? So in terms of the criticism and stuff, has that sort of put you off from the business in any way?
Never. Okay. I think that there's criticism wherever you go, whatever you do. And if you're put off that easily, then entrepreneurship's obviously not for you, I would say.
Good. Thank you for that. Now, moving on to a question from Tim. Tim says, do you see the clothing business as multi-generational? If so, how do you see your children participating in this business?
I think the clothing business has changed significantly since I began. I mean, as a child, we had 1 or 2 coats per season. So you had a formal coat and you had a casual coat, you had a formal dress and you had a casual dress. We've sped up fashion so much to the point that I think we're in a dangerous position. Fast fashion is very damaging for the environment. Buying clothes every week, every month, you've got Primark, you've got all these value retailers. Back in the day when I started in the industry, you could not buy clothes at the supermarket. You only bought food and drink. So I feel that the retailers that are now, Asda and Sainsbury's and Tesco, they're all doing clothes. And when you look at the fabrics, it's really low value. This is all being shipped over, being flown over, and the damage it's done to the environment, it's just not sustainable. And so I think in the future, I think we do need to slow fashion down. I think we're going to start seeing more technology integrated in our clothes. We're going to start seeing cameras in coats and very futuristic. You see it in the films, but I think in the next few years, more brands are going to start adopting more technology. And I think that's where I see our children being involved, if they do choose to go into fashion, that is, because I can't assume that they will. They spend a lot of time in the boutique. They've grown up in the boutique, but there's no guarantee that they will share the interest. In fact, I think our son told my husband once that this is your stuff. I think my husband asked him to do something in the boutique and he said, this is your stuff. This has nothing to do with me. So clearly everybody has their own path and we won't force the kids into the business. But I think definitely technology is the future, and technology is a way that we can aid sustainability and slow fashion down a bit. I think we need to be responsible with the way we consume clothing. We don't need to buy as much just as with food, there's so much food waste these days. We buy so much, we don't eat it all. It goes in the bin. It's the same with the clothing, but except the clothing is not all biodegradable. So where does it go? It just ends up as landfill. And this is something we need to address as individuals and be more responsible.
Fantastic. I don't think you could have said it any better than you just said it. So there is, we are in an age and time where there's just so much wasted, around, and we have to do something about it. So it's good. And I also like the way you've touched upon the fact that, it really depends on, because sometimes the problem with family businesses is passing it on. You might come to a generation that has no interest in that line of business. And I think it's quite good that you're open to that, and knowing that, you might get to a stage where, none of the kids are interested, and, having some sort of plan in place for continuity of the business. So thanks for touching on that. Now, the next question says, so this is from Reiki. Reiki says, okay. Oh, no, not Reiki just yet. We have from Amandeep. Amandeep says, how did you build a successful customer base? I think you've touched on that, but do you want to add anything?
I think in the beginning, I spoke about word of mouth being the best PR. I think I haven't spoken about a customer experience yet. And when you walk into the boutique, you're greeted. And that's not always the case in some shops. You can walk into some shops and you'll be totally ignored. And that one-to-one service that you can receive here is really second to none. You can talk about your body shape here. You can have your garments sculpted to fit you. And I think when you're offering something very unique, that is just unbeatable. And that's the reason why you have many retailers doing many different things, and some doing the same thing, but a customer will always identify with what works for them and how that experience made them feel. And that's what keeps our customers coming back, is how they were felt, how they were made to feel when they were here. We have brides who come in tears because they've bought their dress and it's completely ruined, or they've bought it online and it doesn't look anything like what they thought it was going to be. And to be able to have that dress sculpted and made to fit them, or, just improved, or a jacket that used to fit 10 years ago and doesn't fit anymore, and to be able to rewear that's an amazing experience. And that's actually an emotional thing. So I think if you can tap into your client or your customer's emotions, that is how you get them hooked.
Thank you. And this is sort of what because I teach entrepreneurship as well. I always say it's all about the experience, nothing more. I usually would say, it's not about the price or anything else. It's really about the value you're creating. So it's always better to compete on quality, value rather than price. So thank you very much for sort of agreeing with me on that one. Thank you. Now, the next question, we have quite a few questions for you, Laura. How did you develop the tailors? So how do you develop your tailors? But I think so far it's only Johnson that does the tailoring, or do you guys have a team of tailors?
We do work with freelance. We have worked with freelance in the past. However, it's really difficult to find people who understand your brand as well as you do. It's also very difficult to find talent that performs consistently the way that you need. And on top of that, what I just spoke about, that personal one-to-one experience, when clients get hooked on that, on seeing Johnson and wanting Johnson only, it makes any team that you create redundant. And so we do sometimes work with people who can work behind the scenes. I myself do from time to time do some unpicking, opening seams, preparing the garments. But ultimately, when clients want to walk through the door, they want to see Johnson and they want to talk to Johnson. And so that's the risk attached to building a brand around one person. I would encourage anyone who's thinking of building a business to make sure that your business can still survive if you're away. So, if you need to be away from the business, will your clients still come in? Will your clients trust somebody else in your place? And I think that's an important thing that Johnson is going to be thinking about in the future.
Good, good, good. So it's quite good that you've been critical there, and that's really one of the threats of, family businesses. And really, like you said, when the brand is built around a person, that the continuity becomes a problem. But moving on to the next question, it says, Ray here says, in expanding your business, what mistakes do you wish you could have avoided?
I think, I don't know if Johnson would agree, but I think although we could never have predicted COVID, I think it was a risk. There were other elements to the risk. The fact that there is an outlet, a bridal outlet about 12 miles away called Wed to Be, and they're like a huge warehouse, and they sell their wedding dresses at like £300, whereas we were selling ours at £1,300. And so we were just not able to compete with that kind of price. And although we felt our clients were ready for that more luxury bridal gown, because we missed an entire season due to COVID, we were never able to recover from that. And so I don't know if you can see, I've got one of the gowns behind me. And so I think timing is everything. And unfortunately, timing just wasn't right for the bridal with us.
Okay, great, great. I know that we've had a chat about this, and you did tell me that you guys did try to go into bridals and the timing didn't just work in your favor. Good, thank you for that. Now, moving on, I think we have so much questions for you, Laura. So we have one more or two more. So Laura, what would you advise young people who fear starting out a business or are too comfortable in employment or are waiting for the perfect conditions to start out a business? So what's your advice to those kinds of people?
Okay, there's never a comfortable time to start a business ever. I would recommend, if you can, getting about 18 months worth of living expenses put away, because you will not be able to pay yourself from the business immediately. And so be prepared to work part-time on the side to supplement if you haven't got those savings in place. Also, be prepared to work all the hours God sends in the early days, 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. or 7 a.m. till 12 midnight, whatever your business requires, because essentially in the early days, your business is an infant. But also look out for funding opportunities to start. There are many opportunities out there to get funding to start a business. Have a robust business plan that shows how you project your business to perform, so you have an understanding of what you think you might be able to deliver, and talk to other people in the sector that you're trying to go into. YouTube there's an abundance of information on YouTube. Look at your sector, know your competitors, visit your competitors, and I'm not just talking about national competitors, local competitors, know them very well. Who are your local competitors? Who goes there? What time do they open? What are their special services, and what are their prices? Do you want to undercut them and go cheaper, or do you want to set yourself apart and be more premium? Kind of know what you're trying to achieve from your business, and know what your USP is, your unique selling point. Every business has this, and if you don't know what your USP is from the beginning, you will be confused, and so will your customers, is what I would say.
Great, thank you. Very good advice right there. But before we continue with the questions, we usually do our giveaway. So we give away two £30 Amazon vouchers. We're going to do a spinner very soon. And we also give $40 worth of goodies from fully charged allergy-friendly snacks. Now, the fully charged allergy-friendly snacks are for those based in the USA alone, because the business that does that is in the States, and they can only deliver to the USA. So what I would say is, please, if you're based in the US, can you please put your name in the chat so that we can sort of group you guys separately, so that we have a separate spinner for you. So please, if you're based in the USA, could you please put your name in the chat, so that when we come to do the spinner, we have a separate spinner for those that are US based. Yeah, so those in the States, I know James is in the States, Tim is in the States. I think A is here. So if it's the A, I know she's in the States as well. So please, if you're in the States, if you're US based, please put your name in the chat. Thank you. Yes, Nancy, the recording will be available. It will be. Thank you. Now we have one more question from Nancy. So Nancy, how can a business startup practically be sustainable and profitable considering sustainable fabrics are more pricier? So again, that's a good question. So I think for her, she's trying to be a sustainable business. Now she's like, again, it really ties to what you said, you know, Primark, all these other value brands, they go for cheap materials, you know, and so that they can sell it at cheaper prices. But if you want to be sustainable and go for more expensive fabrics, then how do you compete with the value brands out there?
I think the luxury market, the premium market is very strong. And that's why we have brands like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Chanel. They are very robust businesses that span decades. And so there is a customer out there who wants to pay more, but they are not necessarily the majority. And so if you pitch yourself correctly in the right place, if you do the correct marketing, you will be successful and you will have business. But it's all about positioning, place, price, and understanding your market, your consumer, and how they shop and how they operate.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. Now, one more question, and this will be the final question from the audience. And R.E.A.L, who helps us with the spinner, is going to do the spinner soon. So are you exploring multiple sources of income other than your main source? So in terms of, again, this was going to be one of my final questions. We're looking into the future. What are the future plans in terms of expansion? Do you plan on going into a new field of business, or how do you plan on growing your family business?
Well, I think we believe that work begets work. We believe that you can't plant too many seeds. You reap what you sow. We believe in sprinkling our seeds all around if we can. And I'm a strong believer in a portfolio career. And so because of what I've seen in my own career, where a lot of the brands that started out when I was working are now redundant. So for example, Woolworths went into administration, BHS went into administration, Topshop. These were all brands that I worked with and supplied. Debenhams was a big one as well. They've all gone into administration. So the industry has changed, not just the clothing industry, all industries are changing. And so I think it's important not to rely on one source of income. And that's why we like to diversify and have various offerings. And I would recommend that to all graduates coming up. Consider your options, maybe do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and have a skill, have a passion, have a hobby, and monetize them all if you can. And I think that's the way forward. That's the only way. I mean, in previous generations, my grandfather, he came to Luton from Jamaica, and he came and worked with a company called Vauxhall Motors and IBC. And back in those days, you worked for the same company, you took home your paycheck every week, and at the end of your service, they would give you a gold watch. And that's what you got before you retired. But I think we can't rely on that gold watch and that pension anymore. The world is not as it was. And so employment is not always the secure way as it was for our grandparents and our parents. And so that's what entrepreneurship is really about. It's about securing your future so that you can enjoy your life on your terms. You know, I don't believe in sometimes these salary bands where your line manager tells you what you should earn and, you know, when you should take your holiday and how many days holiday. It is not for me. And I think the younger generations coming up, it won't serve them either. So I'd really encourage diversification and a portfolio career as much as possible.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Laura. So very finally, one of the, selling points for our chat today was the fact that you're a mom of 4 kids, you have a full-time job, you have a family business that you run. How do you manage all these multiple roles? I remember when I first met Laura and, she told me she had 4 kids. I was like, you look very calm. So how do you do that?
I have a great life partner. So that's number one. I was very disciplined as a child about time management. I have no idea why, but my dad was obsessed about telling me not to waste time. And it really resonated with me throughout my life. My mum, like I said, was kind of in the military. So everything was very chop, 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 chop. So I'm very resourceful. I'm very time efficient. And I think that people think money is the best resource, gold is the best resource, oil is the best resource. But actually, I believe time is the best resource and making time work for me. And so I've understood that for a while now. And so people do look at me and say, oh my gosh, you're so calm. How are you so calm? I'm not always calm. There are times when I'm stressed, but I do understand that if I utilize time well, then I can make it work for me. And that's what I do.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that lovely advice. Now we're going to hand over to R.E.A.L. R.E.A.L is going to do the spinner now, and this is where we're going to know who is winning the giveaways for this month. So R.E.A.L, all to you.
Hi, everyone. So for those in the US, we're going to start with you guys first. Congratulations, James.
Great, James, I have your email address. James, I think this is the second time, so you're very lucky. So thank you. Thank you, James. So I'll Tim would reach out to you. So okay.
Okay. For those not based in the US, here we go. Congratulations, Julie.
All right, so Julie, please put your email address in the chat and I'll reach out to you right away. Congratulations.
One more. Congratulations, Aaliyah.
Yeah, Aaliyah. So please put your email in the chat and I'll be in touch right away. So thank you very much, R.E.A.L. R.E.A.L always helps us with our spinners. So thanks again, R.E.A.L. So that's it. Yeah, so that's it in terms of our giveaway. So James Staton has won the $40 worth of goodies from Fully Charged Allergy-Friendly Snacks. Julie and Aaliyah have both won the £30 Amazon voucher. So congratulations. So we're very much close to the end time of our chats today. So we come back to you, Laura, and we say, you know, in terms of the advice you're sort of giving the young people out there, very good advice. Is there anything you want to leave us with before you go?
I think if I could give one piece of advice, I would encourage people out there to not underestimate the power of networking, the power of talking to people. You never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. So never disregard any conversation. Always connect with people as much as you can. Be willing to push yourself out of your comfort zone, because I know especially at university, we can have a tendency to socialize with people only who look like us or who sound like us. And I think that it's important to really push past those cultural parameters and just talk to everyone, because you just never know.
Good. I couldn't agree more, because I'm a lecturer, and one of the universities where I teach, we do have a very large demography of Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. And when they do come in, they just cluster around themselves. And I keep telling them, if you're going to cluster around yourselves, why did you come to the UK? So there's no benefit leaving your country and coming here and clustering with people from your country. I don't see why you came. So you have to sort of make some effort to mix with other people, learn other people's culture, especially when you go to countries that are quite diverse. And just like you said, you just never know who you're going to meet. But thank you, Laura. I really enjoyed our conversation today. We're very good with time today, so I'm very happy about that. But I think it's a good place to stop. The chat has been recorded. I will send out the recording once it's been edited and cleaned out. But I want to thank everyone that has come here today. We had such a good turnout, about 50 people at some point. So thank you very much for taking out your time. We finished with a very high number. So I'm very grateful for everyone that has taken out their time. Again, we do host these events, this fireside chats every month on Zoom. And as long as you're registered, your email address is in our database and we will send you an email for the next one. Like I've said, this is part of Founders and Mentors, and Founders and Mentors is a free mentoring platform for the pre-launch ecosystem. So we provide mentoring and support to those at the early stages of their businesses. Usually in the emails I send, there's a link for you to join, but I'll also, in the more recent emails I'll put a link for you to join Founders and Mentors. It's free for you to join. So please, if you think it'll be of any use to you, by all means join. So thank you, Laura. Johnson, we did not have any time to come to you, but you've been such an inspiration to us and to Laura as well. So we thank you for the foresight in starting this business. Okay.
Thank you, Winifred. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, then take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.